The metal of the door handle burned cold against my palm as I heard my father's voice through the gap. "She's not on the list. We've been over this." A security guard blocked my path, his eyes avoiding mine. Behind him, crystal glasses clinked and laughter floated from the banquet hall where my family celebrated. The same celebration I had paid for in full. $76,000 from my own accounts. "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice steadier than the tremor in my fingertips. "I'm immediate family." That's when my father stepped closer, close enough for me to smell the cologne I'd gifted him last Christmas. He glanced at my dress, the one I'd carefully selected to match the event's colors. His lips curled. "Get this beggar out," he announced, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. My mother's eyes dropped to the marble floor. My sister Olivia's smirk flashed like a knife in the chandelier light. The security guard's hand hovered near my elbow, not touching, just threatening. My name is Fiona Nelson. I'm 35, and this is the story of how I reclaimed my worth after my family tried to write me out of their legacy. I didn't cause a scene that night. I straightened my spine, nodded once as though accepting a business proposal rather than public humiliation, and walked away. Each step on the marble floor echoed with a strange clarity. It was as though the world had suddenly been tuned to a higher frequency. Back in my car in the venue parking lot, I felt a strange sanctuary. I sat there, hands gripping the wheel, watching guests arrive for another 15 minutes. Cousins, aunts, family, friends, all passing through doors I had paid to open. The venue contract with my signature was still in my glove compartment. The catering invoice was still in my email, paid 2 months ago from my LLC account. For 3 years, I'd been quietly funding my family's lifestyle while they told everyone it came from my father's retirement bonus. The champagne tower my mother insisted on for aesthetic. The honeymoon flights for my sister and her husband. The beach condo my parents claimed as their retirement achievement. All from my account. All given willingly, gratefully, repeatedly, until that moment. I opened my banking app. My thumb hovered over the screen for just a second before I began. $7,200, banquet catering, payment reversed. $12,000, honeymoon flights, revoked. $4,800, spa weekend for mom, canceled. $52,000, beach condo payments, FROZEN, total damage. $76,000, effective immediately. After driving home to my apartment, I checked my phone to find it vibrating continuously. 56 missed calls, half from family, half from venues and vendors wondering why their payments had suddenly vanished. I silenced it, poured myself a glass of wine, and waited. The knock came 3 hours later. Hard, insistent. When I checked the peephole, I had to stifle a laugh. My sister's husband James stood there, tie loosened, face flushed red. His phone was gripped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. He must have gotten my address from the family contact list my mother maintained for emergencies. I opened the door but blocked the entrance with my body. "You need to fix this," he barked without greeting. "They just canceled the banquet food. The hotel won't release the rooms, and our honeymoon tickets got voided mid-check-in." I leaned against the doorframe, my posture casual in a way that made his rigidity look comical. "Strange," I said, examining my nails. "Sounds like someone didn't double-check who actually owned those payments." He blinked, confusion temporarily replacing anger. "You did this because they kicked you out." "No," I replied, my voice taking on the same tone I used in board meetings. "I did this because they forgot the one rule of biting the hand that feeds you. Make sure the hand isn't holding all the receipts." His eyes darted past me into my apartment, maybe looking for our parents, maybe searching for signs of regret. But regret wasn't living here anymore. I reached behind the door and retrieved a thick folder, color-coded, tabbed, organized with the precision of someone who had been planning this moment for years. "Signed contracts with my LLC, listed as financial sponsor," I said, flipping pages. "Cancellation clauses with my name as sole authority. Payment reversals processed within the hour of their betrayal." I closed the folder with a soft thud. I warned them 3 years ago. I told them if they treated me like a bank, I'd start acting like a banker. His face contorted. "You're punishing the whole family." I smiled. No, I'm protecting my investment and cutting my losses. They're your parents. His voice echoed in the hallway. They called me a beggar. He had no answer for that, just turned, muttering something about lawyers and taking this higher. But here's the thing about power dynamics. You can't climb higher than the person who holds the ledger, the contracts, and the backup drive. I closed the door, walked to my desk, and opened a new folder labeled Inheritance Audit. Phase 2. By morning, I had 32 emails in my inbox. Some polite, some threatening, all panicked. My mother, we didn't mean what we said. Emotions were high. Can we talk? My father, nothing but a forwarded invoice from the venue, now unpaid and demanding restitution. But my favorite was a screenshot sent by my cousin from the family group thread I hadn't been added to in years. Fiona's always been sensitive. She'll come crawling back. She always does. I laughed, then replied to the whole group. Just a reminder, I own the crawl space and the locks have been changed. No response. Later that afternoon, I received a message I hadn't expected from my parents' accountant. He had been reviewing their financial statements after the payment reversals triggered alerts in their accounts and noticed my LLC listed on several transactions. He asked if I had time to discuss some irregularities. Said he'd noticed the payments to their beach condo hadn't been coming from their trust, but from an LLC he'd never seen before. Mine. I confirmed it. Then asked a question I'd been waiting 3 years to say out loud. Have they declared that condo as their asset in annual filings? Silence. Then. They claimed it was an inheritance gift from a private family investor. No documentation. So they'd not only lied, they'd hidden it. Used my generosity to build equity in a property I technically still owned under my company name. They weren't just ungrateful, they were exposed. The accountant asked if I'd be willing to sign a declaration for tax records. I said yes, but only after I called my lawyer and asked how fast we could serve them papers that would make that condo and every unpaid cent legally untouchable. Within 48 hours, he said. Perfect. Because now this wasn't about family, it was about fraud. By noon the next day, the papers were drafted. A cease and desist for slander, misrepresentation, and unauthorized use of funds, plus a property reassignment, filing removing any verbal claim my parents had over the beach condo. My lawyer, Graham, slid the papers across the table at our downtown office meeting. They'll try to call your bluff. I smiled. They already did. That banquet was the bluff. The process server confirmed delivery an hour later. And just like that, the family celebration turned into a financial reckoning. That night, I got a voicemail from Mom, tearful, rambling. You're destroying us over what? A misunderstanding. You always do this, always so dramatic. Ah, yes, dramatic. The word used to silence daughters while they foot the bill. But she wasn't done. If you follow through with this, people will talk. Church, the neighborhood, your father's reputation. It was always about the performance, the appearance of unity, the illusion of a perfect family, the brand of love, not the reality of it. This time, I let the voicemail rot in my inbox because something more important arrived the next morning. A message from my accountant. Subject, account transfer confirmed. Beach condo title finalized. It was done, legally, irrevocably. That condo, their prized retirement gift, was now permanently separated from their financial portfolio and the taxes they'd dodged filed with interest. Graham emailed shortly after. You've closed every door. Want to take it one step further? I wrote back immediately. Yes, full audit. Start with the family trust. I want to know where every dollar went since 2017. Because they didn't just call me a beggar, they built their banquet on my back, and now it was time to bill them for the chairs they never offered me. 2 weeks later, Graham's team completed their investigation. The trust audit peeled back layers I didn't even know existed. His forensic accountant gained legal access to the family trust records and uncovered everything. $18,700 withdrawn the week I graduated college. Emergency repairs that turned out to be a new kitchen for my sister. $9,000 labeled as education expenses that went to front row concert tickets and a spa weekend for my mother. $34,000 quietly funneled into my father's antique car restoration, a vehicle he once called a reward for raising such responsible children. They had bled that account dry, then still had the nerve to call me the beggar. "Is this criminal?" I asked Graham during our follow-up meeting. He nodded. "Only if you want it to be." But I didn't want jail. I wanted accountability. So we filed a motion. Request for financial recompense plus trust misuse documentation. They had 30 days to respond or settle privately. And that's when the mask finally cracked. An unexpected text came through from my mother. "I'm scared, Fiona. Please don't ruin the family over money. We'll make it right." I stared at it for a long time. No apology, no ownership, just fear. The only language they ever truly spoke. I responded with one line. "Ruin? You're confusing ruin with reveal." The next day, my sister posted on social media, a long-winded caption under a filtered sunset. "Some people only show up when there's money involved. Glad I know who my real family is." I didn't comment. I didn't need to, because now they could say anything they wanted online. But in court, every word had to be proven, every signature traced, every dollar accounted for. And suddenly, the girl they once called dramatic had become the one they had to answer to. Their lawyer reached out on day 22, tone-clipped, language desperate wrapped in legalese. He offered a private settlement, $50,000 in restitution, no admission of wrongdoing, and a mutual non-disclosure agreement. Graham chuckled when he read it in my office. "They're trying to seal the cracks before the neighbors peek in." I didn't want money. Not really. I wanted a record. Proof that I wasn't just the black sheep. I was the scapegoat, the silent benefactor, the unpaid lifeline. So we declined. On day 25, my father broke his silence. He came to my office downtown, the one they once called my little side gig, and asked to talk. The receptionist had let him in despite my instructions, recognizing him from the family photo on my desk. I didn't stand up. He stood in the doorway, hat in hand, pride barely clinging to his shoulders. "You've made your point," he said, "but you're about to ruin us. Are you proud of that?" I looked at him. At the man who once told a room full of guests that my sister was the real success story, and said calmly, "No, I'm not proud. I'm tired. Tired of funding your life while being written out of your legacy." He tried to speak. I raised a hand. "You all called me a beggar." So I stopped giving, and suddenly everyone remembered what I was worth. He didn't apologize. He didn't cry. He just left a folded check on my desk, blank, signed. I slid it back to him. "This was never about your money," I said. "It was about mine." When he left, I opened my inbox. A message from the court system. Trust disbursement fraud. Preliminary hearing scheduled. The date was set. And this time, they'd have to show up. Not to celebrate, but to answer. The hearing date spread through the family like a cracked pipe. Quiet at first, then flooding every group chat I was no longer in. They didn't think I'd really go through with it. They never do. They expect silence. They expect shame. They expect the one they pushed aside to keep the peace while they feast. But this time, I wasn't the help. I was the witness. Graham and I prepped everything. Timeline, account statements, screenshots of messages where I was asked to spot them. Just this once. All the invisible IOUs made visible. The night before the hearing, my sister messaged me for the first time since the banquet. "If you go through with this, I swear I'll never forgive you." No sorry, no denial, just a warning, as if my peace required her permission. I didn't reply because some people don't want reconciliation. They want reinstatement of the version of you who stayed quiet. The morning of the hearing, I arrived at the downtown courthouse. The courtroom was sterile. My parents sat across the aisle with stiff backs and a lawyer who kept checking his watch. The judge asked simple questions. Graham answered them with math. He projected charts onto a screen, demonstrated how the condo payments came from my LLC, how the trust was siphoned for personal gain, vacations, spa days, cars, all under the guise of family needs. My parents' attorney objected, claimed informal arrangements, said, "This is just a misunderstanding blown out of proportion." But the judge wasn't moved. She turned to me and asked, "What outcome are you seeking, Miss Nelson?" I stood. "Truth on paper," I said. "That's all. Let the record match reality." She nodded, gavel struck, and with that, my name was no longer just a footnote in their finances. It was the headline. And for once, the room went quiet without anyone needing to escort me out. They didn't speak to me after the hearing. No calls, no letters, no, "we didn't mean it." Just silence. The kind that comes when a performance ends and the lights go out. The judgment wasn't criminal. It wasn't handcuffs or headlines. But it was binding. The court ordered restitution of misused funds, not to me, but back into the trust where it belonged. The condo's title was permanently transferred to my name, and my parents were removed from any future financial access to assets they hadn't earned. Graham called it elegant justice. I called it balance. Weeks passed. My phone stayed quiet, gloriously so. No requests, no emergencies, no guilt trip asks for just a little help this month. Then one envelope arrived at my apartment. No stamp, no return address, just slid under my door. Inside, a single photo. The family banquet. Everyone dressed in silver and navy, clinking glasses under crystal chandeliers. In the background, blurry but unmistakable. Me, captured mid-turn, mid-leaving. The moment they erased me, memorialized by accident. On the back, someone had written, "This was the moment it all fell apart." I held it for a long time, then walked it to the shredder. Because what fell apart wasn't family. It was the illusion of it. The one they built with my money, my silence, my need to belong. And once that illusion burned, what was left behind wasn't ashes. It was freedom. I built a new folder that day. Nelson Foundation, a grant for first-generation women putting themselves through school without family help. The first funding came from a condo sale. Mine. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one. The Philippe Dufour Grand Sonnerie on my wrist felt suddenly heavy as Uncle Nathan's words hit their target. "Olivia, I hear your little app business is struggling to find investors. Perhaps it's time to consider a real career, like Victor's investment banking." The entire family turned to look at me, their eyes a mixture of pity and smug satisfaction. The watch, worth more than everything in this overpriced restaurant combined, remained hidden beneath my simple white blouse cuff. Just as my company's $11.2 billion valuation remained hidden behind what they dismissively called my computer job. I felt my jaw tighten as Cousin Victor adjusted his Rolex, probably his signing bonus gift and definitely not as rare as he believed. Across the lazy Susan, Aunt Rachel compared her designer handbag to my mother's, voice dripping with the same condescension she'd shown since I was a child. For 15 years, I'd let them believe I was the family failure. Tonight, that carefully maintained facade was about to shatter. My name is Olivia. I'm 32 and a tech entrepreneur. This is the story of how I rebuilt my father's legacy while teaching my family the true meaning of success. The annual Pierce family dinner had been a ritual of humiliation since the 2008 crash wiped out my father's investments and forced him to sell his prized watch collection. Before the crash, Dad had been respected, his passion for horology admired. After, he became the cautionary tale, the reason everyone pushed their children towards safe careers in finance and banking. I'd chosen a different path. When I started my algorithm company 7 years ago, I kept a picture of Dad's dream watch, the Philippe Dufour, taped to my monitor. Not as a symbol of wealth I wanted to acquire, but as a reminder of the precision and craftsmanship I wanted to build into my work. "The bus still treating you well?" Victor smirked, swirling expensive cognac in his glass. I could recommend some good lease options. Before I could answer, Uncle Nathan interrupted. Speaking of success, Victor just made junior partner at Goldman, following in his father's footsteps. The table erupted in congratulations, while I quietly reached for the soy sauce. My sleeve rolled up slightly, just enough for Dad to catch a glimpse of what was underneath. His chopsticks clattered against his plate. "That's," he stammered, face draining of color. That's impossible. The table fell silent as 15 pairs of eyes darted between us. Is something wrong? Mom asked, looking concerned. That watch, Dad's voice was barely a whisper. It's a Dufour Grande Sonnerie. There are only 16 in the world. It's worth over $2 million, Victor finished, his Goldman Sachs-trained eye finally recognizing what he was seeing. As someone who regularly dealt with ultra-wealthy clients, he'd seen photos of these legendary timepieces in auction catalogs. The silence that followed was exquisite. Aunt Rachel's designer bag suddenly looked very cheap. Uncle Nathan's Mercedes seemed decidedly middle class. Oh, this old thing, I smiled, deliberately echoing the phrase Aunt Rachel had used earlier about her Gucci purse. Just something I picked up at auction last month. But how? Mom sputtered. You take the bus. I took a sip of tea, savoring the moment I'd rehearsed in my mind for years. Ever wonder why I take the bus? It's because I'm usually on calls with our Tokyo office. Can't do that while driving. Tokyo office? Victor's smirk vanished. What exactly does your app do? I pulled out my phone, not the latest iPhone, which had made them snicker earlier, and displayed our company's recent valuation report. We develop AI-driven financial trading algorithms, I said, sliding the phone toward Victor. Actually, we probably power some of the systems you use at Goldman. His eyes widened as he read. Uncle Nathan leaned over his shoulder, then made a choking sound. 10 billion? He wheezed. 11.2 after last month's funding round, I corrected, though valuations can be so volatile. Can't they, Victor? The fancy watch on his wrist suddenly looked very small. Dad was still staring at my Dufour, his expression a mix of recognition and regret. He'd been the one who taught me about watches, about their history and craftsmanship, before he'd lost everything and decided that traditional banking was the only safe career path. The auction, he said quietly. Christie's last month. I nodded. Anonymous buyer. I follow all the major watch auctions still, he explained softly. It's the one connection I've kept to my old passion. I read about this particular piece selling for a record amount. I knew you'd recognize it eventually, I said softly. It was your father's dream piece. I know, I replied. Why do you think I bought it? The rest of dinner was awkwardly quiet, punctuated only by the occasional clink of chopsticks and muted requests to pass dishes. My cousins, usually so vocal about their achievements, seemed to have collectively lost their voices. Even Victor stopped mentioning Goldman Sachs. So, Uncle Nathan finally broke the silence. This company of yours, it's quite successful then. I checked my phone. Another notification from our London office. You could say that. We process about 30% of all AI-driven trades in Asia, probably closer to 40% after next month's merger. Merger? Victor perked up, his investment banker instincts kicking in. With whom? Can't say yet, I smiled, but you'll probably read about it in the Financial Times soon enough. Your firm is handling part of the due diligence. Victor's face went pale. The quantum trade acquisition, that's your company? Dad's head snapped up. Quantum trade? The Singapore-based firm that's revolutionizing Asian markets? Among other things, I said deliberately vague. The NDA wouldn't lift for another week. Aunt Rachel leaned forward, her earlier disdain replaced with intense interest. But Olivia, darling, why didn't you tell us? All this time, we thought that I was struggling, taking the bus because I couldn't afford a car. I adjusted my watch again, letting the light catch its perfectly crafted complications. Sometimes success doesn't need to be advertised. Speaking of advertising, Uncle Nathan cut in, my investment portfolio could use some diversification. Perhaps we could discuss... Sorry, I interrupted politely. We're fully funded. Last round was oversubscribed by about $3 billion. The table fell silent again. $3 billion in oversubscription was more money than all their portfolios combined. Mom touched my sleeve gently. But sweetheart, why keep it secret? All these years. Because I wanted to build something real, I replied. Not just chase status symbols and family approval. Dad was still staring at the watch. "The auction," he said suddenly. "There was a bidding war. The price went way above estimates." "I know," I smiled. "I was the other bidder." "But there were two—" His voice trailed off as understanding dawned. "You drove up the price deliberately?" "Had to make sure no one else got it." I shrugged. "It was your dream watch, Dad. I wasn't going to let it slip away." Victor, trying to salvage some dignity, cleared his throat. "Well, at Goldman, we always say—" "Actually," I cut him off, checking my phone again. "Your trading desk just switched to our new algorithm platform. The memo should go out Monday." He deflated completely, his junior partner status suddenly seeming far less impressive. After dinner ended, we all stepped outside the restaurant. Dad followed me to a quiet corner of the courtyard while the others were still gathering their designer coats and luxury car keys. The night air was crisp and I could see his breath as he struggled to find words. "That watch," he finally managed. "It was the one in my study, the picture I kept on my desk for 20 years. I nodded. "Right up until the crash forced you to sell your collection." He winced at the memory. 2008 had hit our family hard, transforming him from a respected collector into someone who pushed his children toward safe careers in banking and finance. "Is that why you bought it?" he asked quietly. "To prove something?" I pulled back my sleeve, letting him really see the timepiece. The moon phase complication caught the streetlight, its perfect craftsmanship a testament to dreams that transcend mere wealth. "I bought it because every time I visited your study as a kid, you'd tell me about this watch, about how only 16 people in the world would ever own it, about how it represented the peak of human craftsmanship." His eyes misted slightly. "When I started my company, I kept a picture of it too, not to remind me about money or status, but about precision, about building something perfect, something rare." Just then, Victor and Uncle Nathan burst out of the restaurant, both talking rapidly into their phones, probably calling their brokers to research my company. Aunt Rachel was not so subtly showing Mom pictures of her nephew's son. "Here," I said, starting to unbuckle the watch. "It was always meant to be yours." Dad stepped back, shaking his head. "I can't. It's too much." "Actually," I smiled, "I bought two at the auction. This one's yours. Mine's in Singapore. I figured one masterpiece per continent was reasonable." His hands shook as I handed him the watch. After a moment's hesitation, he carefully fastened it to his wrist, his expression transforming as he admired it in the streetlight. "Two? But that's $4 million. I shrugged. "About what I make in interest each month. Besides, some things are worth more than money." Mom came over, still clutching Aunt Rachel's phone. "Olivia, dear, about this handsome young man—" "Sorry, Mom," I checked my actual phone, the non-fancy one that ran our secure company apps. "But I'm already seeing someone. He's the head of AI research at MIT. We met at a conference where I was the keynote speaker." Various relatives within earshot nearly gave themselves whiplash, turning to stare. "You know," Dad said softly, admiring his watch, "I always wondered why you worked so hard on those computers instead of following Victor into banking. Remember what you used to say about this watch? That it was valuable not because of its price, but because it represented someone's relentless pursuit of perfection." He nodded. "That's what I built," I said. "Not just another trading company, but something precise, something rare, something that changes the way the whole industry works." My phone buzzed again. The Singapore exchange was opening soon. Dad noticed and smiled. "You should go. Markets wait for no one." "Actually," I pulled out 2 tickets. "Why don't you and Mom come to Singapore next week? See what your daughter actually built. First class, of course." "On your jet?" Mom asked excitedly. "No," I grinned. "On the bus." "Just kidding. Yes, on my jet." Mom beamed, squeezing my arm. "We'll be there. I can't wait to see it." As we said our goodbyes, I heard Victor explaining to Uncle Nathan why making junior partner at Goldman wasn't really that important in the grand scheme of things. Aunt Rachel was suddenly very interested in tech stocks, and my other cousins were frantically Googling my company. But none of that mattered as much as watching Dad show Mom his new watch, explaining its complications with the same passion I remembered from childhood. Some things are worth more than money, like the look on your father's face when he realizes his daughter didn't just succeed, but succeeded while staying true to the values he taught her. I had my driver drop me at my usual bus stop that night. As I rode the bus home, I spent the time looking at pictures of Dad's old watch collection on my phone, planning how to slowly rebuild it over the next few years, one masterpiece at a time. Sometimes the best revenge isn't showing off your wealth. It's using it to restore what really matters. And sometimes, just sometimes, taking the bus doesn't mean you're broke. It means you're too busy building an empire to worry about what other people think. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one. The champagne flute trembled in my hand as James Harrison's voice carried across the ballroom. "Miss Mitchell, I had no idea you'd be here." The crystal chandelier light seemed to intensify, making everything too sharp, too clear. My brother Marcus froze mid-stride, his new bride Jessica's arm still linked with his as they'd been moving to greet the CEO they thought was there to honor them. "We've been trying to arrange a meeting for weeks," Harrison continued, striding toward me with his hand extended. "I didn't expect to run into you at an employee's wedding." The background chatter of the reception dimmed as if someone had turned a volume knob. I could feel my family's eyes boring into me. My mother's confusion, my father's furrowed brow, and Marcus's dawning horror as his CEO bypassed him completely to shake my hand instead. "Hello, James," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "Surprised to see me here? Why wouldn't I be? It's not every day you run into the CEO of Aurora Consulting at a company wedding." He glanced at Marcus, then back at me, realization dawning in his eyes. Wait, is Marcus your brother? I confirmed, allowing myself a small smile as the color drained from Marcus's face, though he didn't know about my position until just now. "My name is Sophie. I'm 34 and the secret founder of a billion-dollar consulting firm. This is the story of how I transformed from my family's afterthought to their entire world's axis. For years, I'd kept my true position hidden from my family, letting them believe I worked at a tiny consulting firm while I secretly built an empire. Every Sunday dinner, every holiday gathering, every family event had been the same. My parents fawning over Marcus's latest achievement at Sterling Industries, while barely acknowledging my existence. "Oh, Marcus got another promotion," my mother would gush, while my father would clap him on the back. "Sterling Industries is lucky to have you, son." Then, almost as an afterthought, "And how's your little job going, Sophie?" I'd smile and say, "Fine, Mom." The consulting work keeps me busy, while mentally reviewing the multi-million-dollar deal I'd closed that morning, or the new office I was opening in Singapore. What they didn't know, what they'd never bothered to ask, was that the tiny consulting firm I supposedly worked for was actually Aurora Consulting Group, one of the largest business advisory firms in the country, and I wasn't just an employee, I was the founder and CEO. The truth was, Sterling Industries had been struggling lately. In fact, they'd been desperately trying to arrange a meeting with my company's CEO, me, for months. I'd seen their financial reports through my industry connections and knew they were drowning in debt. They needed a lifeline, and Aurora Consulting was their only hope. But tonight, at Marcus's opulent wedding to the Sterling CEO's daughter, everything was about to change. The silence that followed Harrison's question was deafening. I could see my mother's hand trembling as she clutched her champagne glass, my father's jaw hanging open in shock. But it was Marcus's expression that truly captured the moment. A mixture of disbelief, embarrassment, and dawning horror as he realized he'd just spent the last hour mocking his boss's boss's boss. Harrison looked between us, clearly trying to process this revelation. "Your brother?" but he said his sister worked at a small local consulting firm. That's what they all thought, I said, my voice carrying clearly in the stunned silence. I never corrected them. Jessica's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The sound seemed to break the spell of silence, and suddenly everyone was talking at once. But I kept my eyes on Marcus, watching as his carefully constructed world of superiority crumbled around him. Just an hour earlier, he'd pulled me aside, champagne in hand and new bride on his arm. Still hiding in corners at parties. Some things never change. Jessica had giggled, adjusting her designer dress. Oh, Marcus told me all about your little consulting job. It's so cute that you're trying to make it on your own. Someone has to do the small jobs, Marcus had continued, his voice carrying just enough for nearby guests to hear. Poor sis, still working at that tiny firm while the rest of us are making real careers. But hey, at least you can say you're independent, right? Jessica had laughed again, a sharp sound like breaking glass. Oh, darling, be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you. I'd felt the weight of my grandmother's antique locket around my neck, her final gift to me before she passed. She had been the only one who believed in me, who supported my dreams with more than just empty words. Success comes in many forms, Marcus, I'd said quietly. Sure. He'd waved his hand dismissively. Speaking of success, did you hear Sterling's CEO is actually coming to the wedding reception tonight? Mr. Harrison himself. He never attends employee events, but for me, he'd puffed up with pride. I'd known exactly why James Harrison was attending. He wanted to discuss the potential buyout of Sterling Industries, a discussion he'd been trying to have with me for weeks. We'd exchanged emails and had several phone conversations, though we'd never met in person before tonight. I'd been deliberately delaying, wanting to see how desperate they'd become. That's wonderful, I'd murmured, hiding my smile behind my champagne glass. Try not to embarrass me when he arrives, Marcus had added. Just stay in the background. This is important for my career. Now, as Harrison stood before me, greeting the CEO he'd been corresponding with for weeks, Marcus's perfect wedding was quickly becoming the talk of the corporate world, but not for the reasons he'd hoped. My mother, always obsessed with appearances, tried desperately to salvage the situation. Sophie, darling, she gushed, suddenly appearing at my side. Why didn't you tell us about your position? I took another sip of champagne, savoring the moment. You never asked, Mom. You were all too busy celebrating Marcus's achievements to care about my little consulting job. Harrison was still standing nearby, looking both amused and uncomfortable. Ms. Mitchell, I had no idea this was a family event for you. Perhaps we could discuss the merger. Merger? Marcus interrupted, his face shifting from shock to panic. He grabbed my arm, fingers digging in painfully. What merger? I carefully removed his hand, keeping my voice level. The one where Aurora Consulting is considering buying Sterling Industries. I turned to Harrison. Though after tonight, I'm having second thoughts about the acquisition. Marcus went pale. Jessica, his new bride, looked like she might faint. But that would make you... Your boss, I finished for him. Yes, it would. Interesting how life works out, isn't it? My father finally found his voice, pushing through the crowd that had gathered around us. Now wait just a minute, he blustered, his face red. You can't just come here and ruin your brother's wedding with these claims. Harrison cleared his throat. I assure you, sir, your daughter is exactly who she says she is. Aurora Consulting is the largest business advisory firm in the country, and Ms. Mitchell founded it from the ground up. I've been researching her company thoroughly for the past 6 months as we've explored this potential merger. I watched my father's face as the truth sank in. This was the man who had told me 10 years ago that I was dreaming too big when I said I wanted to start my own company. The man who had used every connection he had to help Marcus climb the corporate ladder while telling me to be realistic about my goals. But the money, my mother stammered. All those times you said you couldn't help with family expenses. Oh, you mean like the $50,000 you borrowed from my savings for Marcus's MBA? I kept my voice calm, but I could feel years of resentment bubbling up. The money you never paid back. because, and I quote, Marcus needs it more for his future. Jessica stepped forward, her wedding dress rustling. Marcus, darling, did you know about this? About her company? Of course not, he snapped, then tried to compose himself. She's always been jealous of my success. This must be some kind of mistake. Harrison raised an eyebrow. The only mistake, Mr. Mitchell, was apparently your understanding of your sister's position in the business world. Aurora Consulting's annual revenue is more than Sterling Industries has made in the past 5 years combined. The ballroom had gone completely silent. Every guest was watching our family drama unfold like it was live theater. I think, I said quietly, we should continue this discussion somewhere more private. I nodded to Harrison. James, would you mind giving me a moment with my family? He nodded gracefully and stepped away. I led my family to a private room off the main ballroom, closing the door behind us. The silence was deafening. How dare you? Marcus finally exploded. This is my wedding day. You couldn't just let me have this one thing? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. One thing? You've had everything handed to you your entire life. Dad's connections got you into Sterling. Mom's jewelry paid for your MBA. My savings funded your startup attempts. Meanwhile, I built something real, something lasting, completely on my own. We were trying to protect you, my mother insisted, wringing her hands. The business world is so cruel to women. No, Mom, you weren't protecting me. You were dismissing me. Every achievement, every milestone, you brushed them all aside because they didn't fit your narrative of who I should be. My father stepped forward, his business instincts finally kicking in. Now, Sophie, let's be reasonable. We're family. Surely we can work something out that benefits everyone. You mean now that you know I'm successful, you want to be part of it? I shook my head. The merger with Sterling was a courtesy to Harrison. He's a good CEO dealing with a bad board. But after tonight, I met Marcus's eyes. I think it's time for some changes. You can't do this, Marcus whispered, his arrogance finally cracking. Your position was always built on sand, Marcus. You've lost 3 major clients this year alone. The only reason you still have a job is because of your connection to Jessica's family. I straightened my simple navy dress. But don't worry, when Aurora acquires Sterling, we'll find a position suited to your actual qualifications. Jessica let out a small sob. My father won't let this happen. He's on the board. Your father, I said gently, called me last week to make sure the merger goes through. Sterling Industries is drowning in debt, and Aurora Consulting is their only lifeline. As the daughter of a board member, you should know how bad things have gotten. The gravity of the situation finally seemed to hit Marcus. His legs gave out and he sank into a nearby chair. All this time, while we were mocking you, you were building an empire. I tried to tell you, all of you, so many times, but you never listened. You were too busy planning Marcus's next promotion, too focused on maintaining the perfect family image. I moved toward the door. Well, now you know the truth, and things are going to change. Sophie, please, my mother called out as I reached for the handle. We're still family. I paused, my hand on the door. Family? I turned back to face them. Family supports each other. Family listens. Family doesn't mock and dismiss and tear down. You weren't family when I was struggling. You don't get to claim family now that I'm successful. With that, I opened the door and walked back into the ballroom, leaving them to process the new reality of our family dynamic. Harrison was waiting for me near the bar, a knowing look in his eyes. Shall we discuss the merger terms, Ms. Mitchell? He asked quietly. I nodded, a small smile playing at my lips. Yes, James. I think it's time to reshape Sterling Industries, starting with the management structure. As we walked away to discuss business, I could feel my family's eyes on my back. The simple navy dress I'd chosen to seem understated now felt like armor. They had spent years underestimating me, dismissing my achievements, treating me like the family disappointment. But now they knew exactly who I was, and this was just the beginning of their education. The weeks following Marcus's wedding were exactly what I expected. A hurricane of family drama, desperate attempts at reconciliation, and not so subtle handling. My phone buzzed constantly with messages. "Sophie, darling, let's discuss this like family." "Mom, your brother is devastated. How could you do this to him?" "Dad, we need to talk about my position at Sterling." "Marcus, he needs you." "Jessica." I ignored them all. I had a merger to complete. The morning of the Sterling Industries board meeting, 3 weeks after the wedding, I stood in my office on the top floor of Aurora Consulting's headquarters, adjusting my suit jacket. This wasn't the simple navy dress from the wedding. Today I wore a tailored black Armani suit that screamed power and authority. No more hiding. My assistant Emma knocked on the door. "Your brother is here again, Ms. Mitchell, 3rd time this week." I sighed, checking my watch. "Send him in. Might as well deal with this before the board meeting." Marcus walked in looking disheveled, a far cry from his usual polished appearance. His designer suit was wrinkled, his tie slightly askew. "Sophie, please, you have to listen to me." "I'm listening," I said, sitting behind my desk, though I'm not sure what's left to say after your 20 voicemails and 37 texts. He ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I know I was awful at the wedding. I know I've been dismissive of your work, but you can't just take over Sterling Industries. My whole life is there." "Your whole life," I repeated slowly, "was handed to you. Every opportunity, every promotion, every success, it was all arranged by Dad or bought with someone else's money, usually mine. That's not fair." "Not fair?" I stood up, placing both hands on my desk. "What's not fair was using my savings for your MBA without asking. What's not fair was mocking my tiny firm while I built an empire. What's not fair was treating me like a failure while I succeeded beyond anything you could imagine." "I'm sorry," he whispered. And for the first time, I thought he might actually mean it. Sorry doesn't change the past, Marcus. And it doesn't change what's about to happen. I checked my watch again. The board meeting starts in an hour. I suggest you prepare yourself. What's going to happen to me? I sat back down, studying him. That depends on you. Aurora Consulting rewards competence, not connections. If you want to keep a position at Sterling after the merger, you'll have to earn it. Actually earn it. His face paled. You mean starting from the bottom? Learning the business properly? No shortcuts, no special treatment? I held up a hand as he started to protest. It's that, or severance, your choice. Just then, my office door opened again. This time, it was my parents barging in despite Emma's protests. They must have sweet-talked their way past the reception desk and followed Marcus up, a tactic they'd used countless times to bypass gatekeepers in their social circle. Sophie, my mother started, her voice quivering, we've been trying to reach you for weeks. I've been busy, I replied coolly. Running my tiny firm takes a lot of work. My father stepped forward, his face set in what I recognized as his negotiation expression. Honey, we need to talk about this rationally. You can't just destroy your brother's career over some past misunderstandings. Misunderstandings? I laughed. Is that what we're calling years of dismissal and disrespect now? We made mistakes, my mother admitted, wringing her hands. But we're family. Surely that counts for something. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out an old photo, the last family portrait we took before I started Aurora Consulting 8 years ago. In it, I stood slightly apart from the others, wearing a simple dress while they were all in designer clothes. Even then, I was an outsider in my own family. Family counted for something when I needed support starting my business. It counted when I was working 18-hour days building my company. It counted all those times you chose to celebrate Marcus's minor promotions while ignoring my major achievements. I set the photo down, but now it's just business. A knock at my door interrupted us. Emma poked her head in. Miss Mitchell, the board is gathering. I stood up, straightening my jacket. Thank you, Emma. I'll be right there. I turned to my family. You're welcome to stay and watch the meeting on the monitors in the waiting area. I think it'll be educational. The Sterling Industries boardroom fell silent as I walked in. 15 pairs of eyes followed me to the head of the table, where James Harrison stood to greet me. Ms. Mitchell, Thank you for joining us. Shall we begin? The next hour was a master class in corporate restructuring. I laid out Aurora's plans for Sterling, department by department, position by position. By the end, several board members were nodding appreciatively, while others looked shell-shocked. And finally, I concluded, we'll be implementing a complete overhaul of the management structure. No more positions based on connections rather than competence. Through the glass walls, I could see my family watching from the waiting area. Marcus had sunk into a chair, his head in his hands. My parents stood rigid, finally understanding the full scope of my power. After the meeting, Harrison approached me. Brilliant presentation, as always. Though I have to ask, your brother's position, will it be handled fairly? I assured him. If he's willing to work for it, there's a place for him, starting in entry-level sales. Harrison nodded approvingly. You're more generous than many would be in your position. This isn't about revenge, I said, gathering my papers. It's about building something lasting, something real. When I walked out to the waiting area, my family was still there. They looked different now, smaller somehow, less intimidating than they'd seemed all those years ago. So that's it? Marcus asked. Everything quietly changes, just like that? Everything changed years ago, Marcus. You just didn't notice because you were too busy looking down on me. I turned to my parents. The company will be sending over new employment contracts tomorrow. I suggest you all read them carefully. Sophie, my mother stepped forward, tears in her eyes. We were wrong about you. So wrong. Can't we start over? I thought about all the dinners where they'd ignored my achievements, all the family events where they'd treated me like an afterthought, all the times they'd prioritized Marcus's ambitions over my dreams. Starting over would mean forgetting the past, I said finally, and I don't want to forget. Those years of dismissal and disrespect taught me valuable lessons about self-reliance and determination. They made me who I am. And who are you? My father asked softly. I'm the woman who built a billion-dollar company while you were all too busy mocking her tiny firm to notice. I'm the CEO who just acquired the company you thought was the pinnacle of success. And I'm the daughter who finally stopped seeking your approval and found her own path instead. I started walking toward the elevator, then paused and looked back. The contracts will be here tomorrow. Your choice whether to sign them or not, but either way, things will never go back to how they were. As the elevator doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of my family standing there in the waiting room of the company I built, finally seeing me clearly for the first time. That night in my penthouse office, I took out my grandmother's locket, the one piece of family history I truly cherished. Inside was a small note she'd written years ago. Success isn't about who believes in you at the end. It's about believing in yourself from the beginning. I smiled, thinking about how far I'd come from that overlooked daughter in the family portrait. Marcus's wedding had just been the beginning. Now everyone knew exactly who I was. Not the family disappointment, but the force that had reshaped their entire world. And somehow, that felt better than any revenge could.